Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking a highly structured, honestly kind of mind-bending journey through the absolute greatest minds of ancient Indian philosophy. If you're a focused learner looking to grasp exactly how centuries of brilliant thinkers systematically dismantled and then completely rebuilt the very concepts of reality, consciousness, and logic, well, you are in exactly the right place.
All right, let's jump right into this elite group of ancient scholars, revered in the Tibetan tradition as the 6 ornaments and 2 supreme ones. Basically, these are the 8 most revered ancient Indian Buddhist masters. Now, while Gunaprabha and Shakyaprabha, known as the 2 supreme ones, brilliantly codified monastic discipline and the rules of daily conduct, our intellectual journey today is going to focus heavily on the 6 central figures. These are the 6 ornaments, and they literally shape Mahayana philosophy over the course of about 500 years.
Here's our roadmap for today. First, the masters of Indian Buddhism. Second, Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, and Emptiness. Third, Asanga, Vasubandhu, and Yogacara. Fourth, Dignaga, Dharmakirti, and Logic. And finally, we'll wrap up with the ultimate legacy.
Section 1. The Masters of Indian Buddhism.
You know, these figures didn't just sit around writing books in isolation. They essentially waged a centuries-long intellectual relay race, passing the baton of these incredibly complex ideas down through generations. The sheer gravity of their historical influence really cannot be overstated. The texts these masters authored became the absolute bedrock of philosophical reasoning, not just in India, but spreading massively like wildfire across Tibet and East Asia. They fundamentally reshaped how millions of people understood existence itself. So let's break down their specific schools of thought, starting with our very first pair of masters.
Moving into Section 2, Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, and Emptiness. Stepping back to the 2nd century, we encounter Sunyata, or emptiness, championed by our first tag team of philosophers, Nagarjuna and his brilliant disciple, Aryadeva. It's a concept that would change Indian philosophy forever. Now, it is absolutely crucial we define this properly, because you might hear emptiness and think of a depressing void or nothingness, or just non-existence. But actually, scratch that. It means the complete lack of autonomous, independent existence. It's this profound insight that all phenomena are constantly changing and deeply interconnected. Literally nothing exists entirely on its own.
Nagarjuna, who lived around 150 to 250 CE, is often referred to as the second Buddha by Tibetan and East Asian traditions, and for good reason. He revolutionized philosophy by establishing the middle way. He offered these razor-sharp criticisms of both Brahminical and other Buddhist schools of his time that believed in stable, foundational substances or atomic individuality. He essentially argued that there is no way you can pin reality down into fixed, unchangeable categories. He took a philosophical sledgehammer to the idea of stable substances.
So this massive philosophical revolution was carried forward by the number 400. Why 400? Well, that happens to be the title of the masterpiece written by Nagarjuna's foremost student, Aryadeva, the 400-verse treatise.
Born to a royal family in Sri Lanka, Aryadeva traveled all the way to South India just to study under Nagarjuna. He became a master debater, fiercely defending his master's tenets of the middle way against rival schools. But what really brilliantly illustrates his character is the legendary, honestly heartbreaking story of his death. After defeating some opponents in debate, a defeated teacher's student tracked Aryadeva down in a forest and murdered him. But as he lay dying, Aryadeva compassionately forgave his assassin, using his final breaths to give an eloquent discourse on suffering, which ultimately converted his murderer to Buddhism. Incredible, right?
All right, Section 3. Asanga, Vasubandhu, and Yogacara.
Jumping ahead to the 4th and 5th centuries, a pair of half-brothers from Peshawar revolutionized the study of the mind itself. They founded Yogacara, which is often translated as consciousness-only or the mind-only school. Yogacara asserts that everything we perceive as a solid external reality is actually just a mental construct. They radically challenge the materialistic idea of an objective, external world, arguing instead that our entire perception of reality is exclusively shaped by our consciousness. Think about that for a second.
Asanga is historically credited with founding this Yogacara school. But what's really fascinating here is the brotherly dynamic. His half-brother, Vasubandhu, was initially a vehement critic of Mahayana Buddhism, strongly aligned with earlier, completely different philosophical schools. So Asanga, pulling the ultimate sibling guilt trip, pretended to be severely ill just to get his brother to visit him. It totally worked, and it resulted in a deep philosophical debate that successfully converted Vasubandhu, who then became one of Mahayana's absolute greatest champions.
This brings us to the sheer encyclopedic scale of Vasubandhu's output. His famous text, The Abhidharmakosha is a staggering summary of Buddhist philosophy. I mean, it outlines everything from the fundamental elements of reality to deep cosmology, the mechanics of karma, the underlying tendencies of human defilement, all the way up to the highest states of meditative attainment. It's the whole shebang. And within that massive text, Vasubandhu masterfully compared opposing views. For instance, he impartially laid out the debate on our mental afflictions. The Sarvastivada school believed our negative tendencies were ultimately real, existent factors. But Vasubandhu contrasted this with the Sautrantika view, which he often personally favored, arguing that these tendencies aren't physical entities at all, but just latent forces or seeds resting within the mind stream, just waiting for the right conditions to sprout. He essentially acted as an intellectual bridge, meticulously documenting the whole philosophical landscape of his time.
Section 4. Dignaga, Dharmakirti, and Logic. We now move entirely away from the nature of the mind, stepping straight into the rigorous rules of debate and logico-epistemology. This next duo is famous for their focus on pramana, which translates to valid cognition. Dignaga essentially forced a massive epistemological turn in Indian philosophy. Up until this point, people were debating what reality was. Dignaga came along and asked, wait a minute, how do we actually know what is true? What are the valid instruments of knowledge?
Dignaga laid down a strict rule that completely changed the game. He argued there are only two valid ways to gain true knowledge. First, perception, what you can directly and accurately observe. And second, inference, what you can accurately deduce through flawless logical reasoning. This rigorous system forced all other philosophers, both Buddhist and non-Buddhist, to seriously level up their debate skills or risk being completely intellectually dismantled. Building directly on Dignaga's work, we arrive at the number 7. This represents the 7 monumental treatises on valid cognition written by Dignaga's intellectual successor, Dharmakirti, in the 7th century. Dharmakirti perfected this school of reasoning. He took Dignaga's logical tools and applied them aggressively. He used flawless logical deduction to philosophically prove concepts like the existence of past and future lives and the validity of the Buddha as an authoritative source of information. Dharmakirti's texts on logic are so incredibly precise, so foundational, that they remain the absolute cornerstone of the curriculum for advanced monastic university degrees even today.
And finally, Section 5, the ultimate legacy.
When we step back, we can really marvel at the incredible chain of knowledge constructed over half a millennium. Just look at how this history flows. In the 2nd century, Nagarjuna and Aryadeva deconstruct reality to show us emptiness and interdependence. In the 4th and 5th centuries, Asanga and Vasubandhu build on that fluid reality to show how it is entirely filtered and shaped by our consciousness. And finally, in the 5th through 7th centuries, Dignaga and Dharmakirti provide the strict logical tools required to actually defend and understand these massive concepts without getting lost in delusion. It is just a perfect architectural build of human thought.
I want to leave you with a final thought here. These aren't just dusty, ancient theories. They are incredibly sharp tools for analyzing your own life. If Nagarjuna and Vasubandhu were right, if the world isn't a fixed, solid thing acting upon you, but is rather an interconnected web deeply shaped by your own mental constructs, how does that shift the way you react to your challenges today? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.